Hello and welcome to Tech Talks. Today we have with us Sunil Raina, who is the President and Business Head at Lava Mobiles. Thank you, Sunil, for joining us today. Sunil has roughly 20 years of telecom experience, having worked with Tata, Airtel, and Reliance. He spent the last 10 years at Lava and was one of the earliest team members at the organization. Again, thank you, Sunil, for joining us. We hope looking forward to a wonderful conversation with you today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and thanks for having me. And greetings to all your viewers.
Thank you. So, Sunil, my first question to you is something that I'm asking all business heads, all CEOs is, have you seen any changes in consumer behavior post-COVID? And I know the answer is yes, but what is it? What is the visible shift that you have seen from your perspective?
See, I think, yes, you're right, because the changes are happening everywhere. See, because the period of lockdowns and period of people staying at home becomes kind of elongated now, and this is actually going to lead to some permanent behavior changes. So, because there's some behaviors will be temporary, which will really come back to normal once the whole thing is over. But there are some permanent behavior changes also happening. For example, the digital adoption is now faster, and we being at the center of digital overall digital scenario in the country. For example, smartphones per se are leading the digital wave, so to say. The point is, in our case, in our industry per se, we are now seeing an accelerated growth in the smartphones, because it's not just about people not being able to socialize as they were doing in the normal circumstances. It's also about, let's say, in the area of education. Now the entire education is now happening digitally. So therefore, a new segment of people has also got added, which is the students who would get a phone maybe much later, in their life to use as a smartphone. But now they are getting it much earlier, because if the student has to spend 5-6 hours of class from home, so that person needs a separate device per se. So we have seen these shifts in the behaviors, and what is also going to happen, this I believe is also going to be more permanent in nature, because while the physical presence of people who are working, or people or students for that matter, even when the office is open, I think the regularity of people going to offices will also come down. Maybe students going to schools and colleges will also come down, which is a permanent shift in the behavior. So therefore, our industry is perhaps in a way gaining the most from this scenario.
Thank you. I think so. I think what I'm hearing is there has been a definite impact on the kind of sales that Lava has been doing in the last 2 or 3 months. Do you also see a shift in the kind of trust index that people are putting in a brand like Lava?
Oh yes, I think what has happened because of other than COVID, which is one aspect. Secondly, this geopolitical scenarios that are evolving, and also a trouble with our neighbors on the borders. So that's kind of we've seen a shift in the sentiment, and there's more positivity towards Indian companies, Indian brands, more positivity than it was before the COVID period, before all this happened. So that shift is definitely visible, and honestly, we were not as ready for it as we should have been, because we had not anticipated this kind of a scenario to take shape. Now, when this is happening, so there's a lot of pressure also on us to really, do things quickly and be ready for it. So, which is a good problem to have. So, yeah, so we're trying to grapple with and trying to figure out how to do it quickly.
Wonderful. And what like you're saying, you're trying to grapple with this, you're trying to bring more products into the market. What has been the change in marketing strategy that you have adopted post-COVID? Is there a definite shift in what you were doing and what you are planning to do or are already doing now?
So actually, luckily for Lava, if you remember, we started this brand campaign called Proudly Indian almost 2 years back.
Yeah.
Right. So that was a time when people were not really wanting to say that they are Indian brands, that they're Indian players, so to say. Being a foreign brand was kind of a, it was a statement of pride, so to say. but we felt that as an Indian company and somebody and as a company who genuinely sees that India deserves a better place when it comes to technology, when it comes to being a consumer brand. So therefore, we thought, there is a certain amount of pride in being Indian, because what is going to happen in India in terms of shift of manufacturing, shift of technology is inevitable. That was writing on the wall. But the only difference is that we did not think that it will happen this fast because of a lot of scenarios that are changing. But one thing was very clear in our mind, because that's something, one of our missions is to really become a global Indian brand. And that is not because what is happening now, that's because what we have thought from day one. Therefore, 2 years back, we started this Proudly Indian campaign. And in this scenario, with a lot of sentiment being positive towards Indian products and brands, we've actually only kind of accentuated it further. We've just taken it, built the tempo a little higher on that, and now others are also trying to catch up and do the same thing. Other brands I also see are trying to use the same line. Use Proudly Indian as a line is something we coined 2 years back. Use the same hashtag, and some people also trying to say Proud Indian, etc., etc. So for us, there's been no change in terms of what we wanted to say, but there's been change in terms of how much of it are we going to say. So that's the quantum change has happened. Yes, that's the only change right now.
Sure. That's very interesting, and I think that was extremely future gazing of you to be, talking about Proudly Indian a couple of years back. And I love the fact that you said that you're aspiring to be a global Indian brand. I think that is wonderful. You already have markets outside of India, I believe, in Mexico and South America. So the telecom industry, as you know it, OEMs are, Chinese brands are dime a dozen out there, and there is a lot of that. There used to be at least a big market for them. What is your perspective on what the impact will be of this local for vocal campaign and what the Prime Minister has said? What is the impact on Chinese brands and Chinese manufacturers in India?
I think, let's be honest. I think Indian brands, when all this call for local for vocal happened, vocal for local happened. So Indian brands were not ready. It's a fact, right? So therefore, to extract a very high market share and take it from Chinese brands and bring it to Indian fold, that has not happened. So it has happened incrementally, but it's not really been able to make a huge dent to them. So that's a fact. However, what is interesting and what is very encouraging for a company like us is that now we know that Indian consumers are willing and open to experiment with the Indian companies and brands, right? Okay. So we may not be able to get the immediate term benefits which we have not really got. Maybe got some incremental benefits, but in the longer run, that acceptance and that positivity towards Indian brands is something which is a very long-term, in a way, it's a long-term advantage, but at the same time, a responsibility for Indian brands as well. Sure. So, because you have to understand, why is it that the Indian consumers shifted to Chinese brands, leaving Indian brands and shifting to Chinese brands, is because there were certain deficiencies that Indian companies definitely had. And Chinese companies, both in terms of technology, also in terms of pricing, in terms of marketing, they were far, far ahead. Therefore, the shift happened. But I think, at least I can speak about our own company. Over the last few years, we've been completely focusing on making sure that how do we make our products competitive with respect to the Chinese companies and any international brands, so to say. So that's where we have spent most of our time and energy on. And I think now we are at a stage where we are ready to take on. So we've not really, in fact, no, the key thing that we did is we shifted the design, mobile phone design, the entire hardware, software, as well as industrial design, all of this to India. So all this work is now happening out of India. Yeah. And we will be having our first designed in India and completely 100% made in India phone coming sometime before Diwali. So that for us is a big shift. That's a big leap in terms of for an Indian brand to be able to do such a thing. It's not easy to do. So Yeah, but I think in the longer run, it's going to be beneficial if we do a good job of it. I mean, if we don't do a good job, then consumers will have choices again. So they'll go wherever they like.
Correct. I think the consumer is slightly fickle when we talk about them. But Indian manufacturers, like you said, Indian brands were not ready for this call of local, for vocal for local and made in India. And one of the reasons that they weren't particularly ready is because of certain policies that, as from the government and from a society that we had. Do you think the vocal for local and the made in India calls are enough for Indian companies to actually step up on these opportunities, or are there more policy changes that you would expect from the government and from the Indian mindset?
So I think, see, one important change because of this push for vocal for local is that now all the three stakeholders in working out, in thinking of how to take this country forward, which is the people of the country, the government of the country, and the companies of the country. I think now all these three stakeholders are thinking alike. They're thinking in the same direction. They're not thinking different directions. I think that's a phenomenal thing to happen to any country, because if all the three forces are aligned, then things will change for good. Yes, I think there are responsibilities. I think the people of the country are definitely kind of fulfilling their responsibility of saying, okay, if you have something good, we would love to buy products from you. So I think they have taken the lead, no doubt about it, and we are very thankful to them for it. Government has also come up with now newer policies which are more beneficial for Indian companies. So that's a very important step. For example, the PLI scheme that the government came up with is a very, very good scheme for us to, although there's no end to how much you can ask from the government, we can continue to ask forever. But eventually, I think it's the responsibility of the brands and the companies also to step up and do things on their own, because you can't be spoon fed all the time. You have to show your own metal. You have to do your investments in the right places, invest in right areas of growth, and then take the competition head on. So I think yes, government is doing its job. People are doing their job. We have to do our job, and that's the only thing left now.
I think that's a lovely sentiment, owning up to responsibility. I think that's great. Moving on, we spoke about local for vocal. We spoke about consumer behavior changes. And you said now it's time for brands to step up. So in the last 2 or 3 months, we've seen brands going on an accelerated pace of digital transformation. Has that been true for you also? And are there any opportunities that you as an OEM manufacturer, or any other products that you're thinking of in this space?
See, I think first of all, when it comes to products, we are really focused on what we can do in the smartphone space. That's one aspect which is clear
Sure.
From our side. We're not really planning to venture into other areas. For example, a lot of companies are going into, let's say televisions and other stuff, latest stuff. So we're not really looking at that. We're really looking at focusing on the smartphone space and what we can deliver for the consumers of the country. However, I think we've been a little ahead. Say, for example, so we've been traditionally a offline centric brand. So we believe we support the offline channel more than the online channel, because online channel is more about discounts, more about burning the money, giving freebies and discounts, etc. And offline is a very large number of people whose livelihood depends on what gets sold there in those shops. So we have strategically always maintained that we'll be offline centric brand, and therefore we do that. However, having said that, offline also has to compete with the online space, because there are benefits, pros and cons of buying online. There are pros and cons of buying offline. The one significant differentiation is how are you able to digitize this whole channel? Are you able to digitalize the channel? So what we have done is we have actually built a complete end-to-end digital platform. And this platform today has all 150,000 retail outlets who are directly connected with the company.
Okay.
And also our distributors, our retailers, our sales team, everybody is on that digital platform. We took around 3 years to build that platform. And the platform is now running up and running for the last 1.5 years. So some of these things we've done a bit ahead of the curve, but I think these are going to be things which will become very helpful and beneficial to us in coming time, because yes, people will prefer now digital purchases more than offline purchases, at least in the immediate future. And similarly, like I said, offline channel also has to really be able to compete in that space, and therefore they must also take up the digital transformation route, which we are also doing from our end when it comes to the offline space.
Yes. So since you speak of the merger of the online and offline world, we see that tier 2 and tier 3 markets have been very important for you in the past. And how are you planning to tap into these, given the lockdowns, given all these unprecedented situations that we seem to be falling into every week? How have you worked on your logistics? Since you're saying offline is important, how are you delivering products in time? How is online working for you in this time?
So luckily for us, I think because of the warehouse network that we have, and also the micro distribution network that we have,
Okay.
and we have roughly over 1,000 distributors in the country, right, who are connected to these retailers, and at a very short distance. They're not really not that you have one guy for entire state. So you have thousands such people who are catering to every nook and corner of the place. So logistically, initially it was there were a lot of restrictions initially, especially during April to June period.
Mm-hmm.
But now these restrictions have been eased out, and logistics has not been an issue the last 2-3 months, and therefore we are easily able to reach out to the almost all the retail outlets where we want to be. Yes, some of the sale loss from offline is happening to online, which is a fact, because some days have been declared lockdown days for some states, different depending on the state you are in.
Yeah.
So those days of loss, sale loss happens, but that's fine. I think it's okay. You still have a very, very large market to cater to, so not to worry much about that part.
Yes. I don't think mobile buying is a one-day decision, that if I don't get it on a Saturday, then I won't buy it.
Of course, and that's what we've seen. Yes, on a Saturday, Sunday, we see the sale dipping overall,
Yeah.
but then on Monday, Tuesday shoots up. They're kind of compensating for the loss that happened on Saturday and Sunday.
Exactly. And I was really excited about what you said about you moving, and I read about this also, that you moved your entire base from other countries into India. Honestly, how easy or how difficult was this? How much planning did you need to do this? And what are there anything else that you were doing to build up more indigenous supply within the country for Lava?
Yeah, so actually, see, we have uh, after we shifted the design uh, from China to India, I think that was a big shift.
Yeah.
Because see, getting components from wherever you get them, because the component manufacturers will remain the same more or less, right? We are not going to make components ourselves. The component ecosystem has to shift to India, which is like, let's say, chipset manufacturers. They will come to India and make chips out of India, or display manufacturers will come to India. We just have to either we take it from them from India, or take it from other places. But when it comes to India, obviously we'd like to take it from India. But say, let's suppose other parts like battery, charger, shell, etc. So all those things we have already localized here in India itself. If you see, we have feature phone and smartphones. In feature phones, we are already moving towards 80% localization in feature phones. So 80% parts are now localized based out of India. And similarly, our journey in smartphones is also going to be similar. So today is around 30, 35%, 40%. If you take the real localization, because there are others who throw numbers like 60%, which is a very, you can kind of give numbers to justify that also. But yeah, we're talking about the real numbers here. And that real number 30-40% is happening out of India in terms of smartphones, and which will be similarly dependent. See, the major thing is that the key component suppliers, when they come to India, that's when the actual localization will happen. The key components, like I mentioned, chipset is a key component,
Yeah.
Display is a key component, right? Memory is a key component. These form a very large part of the BOM cost in a phone. So when they shift, then real localization will happen at that time.
So, like you said, there are these parts that have to move to India and support this indigenous supply. Now, the mobile space we've seen typically is an extremely tech and innovation dependent market. So, what can we expect from Lava in the coming months? You already spoke about the 100% Indian phone that we can expect before Diwali. So, what are the innovations? What are the technologies that we can expect from Lava? And also, what are your plans for the festive season?
Yeah. Okay. So actually, see, let's understand innovation, the context of innovation.
Sure.
So innovation is something that really solves a big problem of the consumers. It solves some problem for the consumers, right? And then it is supported by technology to really take care of that problem. But it is important to really understand the problem in the first place, right? So I think because we as a company are deeply entrenched in India, our understanding of Indian consumers, our understanding of Indian life is perhaps better than everybody else. And that's, we do a lot of research also on the ground to figure out what is it that our consumers are doing. And therefore, the kind of innovation that we've done in feature phones uh, has now, we are 20% plus market share today. We were 1.5 years, we were 5%. Now we are 20% plus. So that jump in the market share has primarily happened because of the kind of innovation we have done. So, for example, I'll give you an example. Recently, we launched this product called Lava Pulse. This product is it's a feature phone, simple phone, but it also has a blood pressure and heart rate sensor in it. So you can, and it is fairly accurate. So you don't have to go to a doctor or a hospital to get your blood pressure and heart rate checked. So it is fairly accurate. So that's one innovation. Second innovation is that people on feature phones, people who use feature phones do not have access to banks, and therefore they're not able to digitally transact.
Yeah.
So we launched this platform called Lava Pay, so which enables feature phone consumers to do commerce on their feature phones. So these are nuanced understanding of Indian consumers, which we are solving through technology. And we have similar plans for smartphones as well. So in fact, the first smartphone, Design India smartphone that will come out, which is primarily going to be targeted at the migration of feature phone to smartphone. It will solve some key problems of Indian consumers because we have researched them very well and figured that these are 3-4 areas where we have to really figure out a solution, which eventually people will call innovation, but they're actually problem solving technologies that we've used, right? So that's what it is. A lot of people say you have to do R&D. So R&D is basically, while it means research and development, it also means relevant and differentiated. So if you want to differentiate, you also have to be relevant. You can't just differentiate for the sake of differentiation. So yeah, that's what we try to do.
I think wonderful. I really love the fact that it's an Indian brand that can actually understand an Indian consumer. So it's probably something as simple as a BP monitor is probably not even something you can get out of an R&D department, but that's purely intuition also at some level. So I love this conversation. Thank you so much, Sunil. Thank you for joining us today. I think we've heard some wonderful things about the product, and I'm really excited to look forward to how it grows as a brand. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.